Hello. Point of view is inseparable from time. That's something I said last time. And the word time keeps coming up when you talk about this kind of stuff. Welcome back. I'm going to demonstrate that with a small example, then look back at the exercise I gave last time, which was about a couple breaking up and you writing about them from the point of view of A, who'd been dumped by B, and A narrating that, writing about that immediately afterwards, and then a short time afterwards, a day afterwards, a week, a year, 10 years, 50 years, and how that way of narrating, how what they would say, the rhythm of their sentences, the attack of their sentences would change. So there are events in time. Time isn't just blank. And a simpler example, and if you wanted to do a mini version of this exercise, think about this. A thunderstorm. You are in bed, you, the narrator, I, are in bed at night in a thunderstorm. How do you narrate that? What do you say about it at the time it's actually happening, with the crashing, with the fear that some lightning might suddenly zag through the room and electrocute you? How do you narrate that? And then how do you narrate that around the breakfast table with the other house guests, wherever you're staying, or the other campers in the campsite? How do you narrate it the following morning in the sunshine? And then how would you narrate it a couple of weeks later when you were talking about what your holiday was like? How would you narrate it a few years later when you were reminiscing about that holiday where there was that terrible thunderstorm, which some people around the table might have forgotten and others might remember and still be a bit traumatized by? All of the ways in which you would describe it or react to it or find it humorous or be terrified, all of those would change. And that's because of point of view and time and the events that have happened in between, but also just the distance in time from the thing that is the center of the sentence, the thing that is the subject. In the case of the breakup exercise you did with A and B, none of the changes you made in the writing are the result of changing the staging of the scene, or at least I hope not. That happens as it happens in time moving forwards, and A and B are fully passionate in their embeddedness in those moments. But later on, a little later, and then much later on, A has left behind their immediate emotions and transitioned to forms of reminiscence and judgment. They've also forgotten a lot. They are a much older person with changed values that perhaps changed as a result of being so brutally dumped. Now, a writer, usually a novelist, because novelists often deal in longer periods of time, can choose to have their narrator re-enter earlier scenes during the moments they're happening. Sensorially, in terms of visual and tactile detail, they can go back into those moments, but also, if required, by flipping to first-person present tense. Some people do this as writers without even realizing it. I often see it in my students. These writers' narrator can remember or observe the exact design of the cafe's salt shaker or the exact number of crows in the sky. This is an accepted convention, this time travel, like the old wibble-wobble shot to show flashbacks in 1970s TV shows and ironic 2000s TV shows. It's a convention because people don't generally observe or remember so many exact details from the past, not even in those kind of crucial scenes like a breakup. Let's examine this frailty of memory. Another exercise I do is to ask students to write down, and I'd like to get you to do this too, to write down the longest unbroken sequence of back and forth dialogue that they can remember from their lives. Any point in their lives, this morning or years ago. Have a go at doing this now. Pause this, take a moment. Every single line that you write down of dialogue needs to be in your memory with certainty. You can't resort to, and so said something like, Give yourself as much time as you need. Pause now. So how did you do? We were in the car driving to the beach, and I said, and my sister said, and then my dad said, and my sister replied. That's 4. 4 bits of dialogue. How long did you keep this up for? 5 lines of dialogue, maybe? 6, 7, or 8? Now think of the length of a normal, supposedly remembered 50 years later scene in a first-person past tense novel, or even in a memoir. Sometimes a scene will go on for 3 or 4 pages of total recall of dialogue, not "and then she said something like." Again, as I say, there's nothing bad in this. This is an accepted convention of literary point of view. It's a blind spot. We accept we're going to cover over with invented dialogue, invented memories. Not every novelist has to insert a proviso. Of course, she didn't replay the breakup scene like a widescreen movie in her head, but flashed through 2 or 3 vivid details that may possibly have come from other breakups with other people, but I'm going to use those anyway, and also fill in the gaps in memory and provide some additional dialogue. Ignore me, I'm not here. That's basically the convention. But you don't, as you're reading a novel, perceive that this is what's being done, just as when you're in the cinema, you don't notice that you've read a reverse angle shot as giving you the point of view of the character who's just been on screen. That's much more momentary, but it's the same kind of thing. It's a flip in point of view from very, very close first person to actually third person that's helping out the first person. There's an invisible third person narrator who's nudging them with the details, the number of crows in the sky, the design of the salt shaker. Cinema has this grammar, these conventions, and we accept them to help us enjoy the films, but they were developed over time. And although they are imperceptible to most viewers, they are definitely not imperceptible. The use of these, the scripting of these conventions, they're not imperceptible to screenwriters, directors, and editors. As a writer, you are equivalent to all 3 of these simultaneously, as well as everyone else who works on a film set or in post-production. You do costume, makeup, hair, sound design, cinematography, and you make the tea. But also you choose where the camera is going to be placed, what it's going to look at. And so you are hyper aware of point of view. And that's what we're going to be looking at over the coming weeks. Complete guide to point of view. We're going to start going through the points of view one by one, but there's a few more things to say before then. Hope today's been useful. Have a go at the Remember Dialogue exercise. Have another go if you haven't already. And please like, share and subscribe, and I hope to see you soon.